Yeah, we've been talking. I mean, the one thing maybe I can give him some of my experience on is just sort of the different days, obviously, and the first day it happens. But I found personally going home and seeing loved ones was really tough. So we know that. I can't imagine how hard that's been. But just talking to him as much as we can periodically here, see how he's doing, and obviously going to be going to the funeral this week to show him support.
That was Josh Morrissey, defenseman with the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, he did not finish Game 6 in Dallas. Spoke about his injury. We'll touch on that. We'll play that audio later. They weren't connected. What took him out in Game 7 against St. Louis was not connected to the injury in Game 6, and we'll touch on that as the show goes on. Jets at Noon is brought to you by Wash Method Car Wash, 690 St. Anne's Road. VIP take on the text line. Wins a VIP car wash from our good friends at Wash Method, 204-780-6868. We'll announce the winner later in the program, coming at you live from the Boston Pizza studio. Celebrate the ongoing Whiteout. Whiteout never dies at Boston Pizza, your go-to place for the playoffs. Cam Poitras here, Jim Toth. Jim, season over for the Winnipeg Jets, losing in Game 6 in Dallas, 2-1. In overtime. Difficult game to look at, particularly with the very difficult circumstance. Of course, the passing of Brad Scheifele, Mark's dad, finding out about that in the morning. The team, Scheifele deciding to play for his father. The game where I thought the Winnipeg Jets got it out. I thought they played great. But just the circumstances of it, with Mark Scheifele ending in the box, taking that penalty, which of course he had to take in that situation. Difficult the whole game. It's a challenging thing to talk about. But I know one thing. There's a way to go out and there's a way to not go out. And we saw one team over the weekend go out the way that you can't go out, with the Maple Leafs losing 6-1 into Game 7 after bringing this series back home. And you see the Winnipeg Jets going out in overtime in a 2-1 tight hockey game, dealing with the roller coaster and the emotional ups and downs of seeing just the rawest form of pain that somebody can go through. That's the way you want to go out, I think. Like, of course, the tragedy aside and all that, the Winnipeg Jets are a team that took some steps, and it was evident with how they performed in Game 6 against the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things to unwrap here. And you and I were just talking right before we came to air about this is the most bizarre end to a Jets season that I've been covering this team since 2011 that I've ever had. I expect we'll still get a little bit of the not good enough, and they weren't. I suspect we'll still get a little bit of, as you just mentioned, you can't take that penalty. Yes, you can. That is the penalty you have to take.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at how much
I can't believe that we're there's people that perhaps have watched hockey their entire lives and have watched how many hockey games in their lives and don't understand that that's a penalty you have to take, which is what I've heard. But anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is because you leave yourself 8 seconds. You leave your season down to 7 to 8 seconds to win a faceoff and try to tie.
I don't know how somebody can't understand
that. You take the penalty and you roll the dice because the opposite of that is potentially only having 8 seconds to save your season.
I'm sorry, Jim. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. It's just heartbreaking, Cam, that I'm 53 years old. My dad is 90. He's going to be 91 in September. Mark Scheifele's 32. He doesn't have his dad anymore. Josh Morrissey's 30. He doesn't have his dad anymore. I know you recently lost your father.
Yeah.
There's those storylines, right? Like, I feel so fortunate, and I feel guilty for feeling fortunate. These are two young men. I think of myself at 30 and 32. And where I was in life and the years that I've shared with my father since then, that this is devastating. But then we get back to the hockey part of it. He was the best player on the ice. And I'm not a man of deep faith like Mark Scheifele is. I don't know where he got that strength. And I'm not talking about playing the game. I think most people's fathers would want them to play the game. I don't know where he got the strength to be the best player on the ice. There's two different things here that I think aren't being talked about enough. There's the strength to play, to always have this on your mind throughout the entire morning, throughout the entire afternoon, going to the rink, getting dressed, and the pockets of time where your father creeps into your mind. And then there's getting on the ice and pushing that aside and performing to the level of being the best player on the ice. Now, there was a lot of great performances in that game. So there's that. And then there's what you just touched on. We're going to get into this as the week rolls on about growth from this team. And a lot of people are going to say second round, not good enough. And they're right. Like this is Kyle Connor mentions that. We're going to hear from him.
Yeah.
But the difference is this and the Leafs. You cannot get worked like the Leafs did in game 5 and then game 7 on home ice and say that you've grown as a team under new coaching, to say that you've gotten to a better place. You can with the Jets. They were never not in a game in these 6 games with Dallas, whom I think, as I said all year, the best team in the West, and I think is a Stanley Cup favorite now. But that being said, they went into an elimination game and shut out this Dallas team. They went into an elimination game and lost in overtime on a penalty kill. That's different than getting worked 6-1. And I know it was 0-0 after 1 in Toronto and Florida, but they were, I think, shot attempts were 20-0, 21-0 at one point in that first period. So this isn't about the Leafs, though. So there's all that wrapped into this, and it's a different wrap up to the season, Cam. Yeah. It's if this hadn't happened and they lost in the same fashion, we'd be talking about should Scheifele have taken that penalty. We'd be talking about you can't do that, and you can't, the penalty kill. We'd be talking about what Kelly Moore does in his Jets report, best team in the regular season, best power play, blah, blah, but we're far from that in the playoffs. But to me, I see growth here. I see the fact that once they got out of the first round, and you and I have talked about this for 3 years, if they could just get out of the first round. Now, if they got out of the first round and did to Dallas what St. Louis and them did, I would feel differently about this team. But they got out of the first round, and they got their confidence, and they got the monkey off their back. They went toe-to-toe in 6 games, and it wasn't good enough. So there's work to be done, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything here, but there was growth there. Mm-hmm. I think Dallas is a much better team than St. Louis. And the way that they finally shed that monkey off their back with the first round stuff, got to against Dallas, and were never out of a game. But you look back at the margin is so small. And I look back at that game 1, 3-2. It was a good game. They played well, but it wasn't playoff well. And then they were chasing it the whole time. I think they were the better team in 2 of the losses than Dallas was.
I agree.
But that's the playoffs. That's what's the next step for the growth in this team, is to not just be the better team, but win those games. But they were never out of this. Connor Hellebuyck did not have a bad game in Dallas, including game 6. He let in 1 bad goal in 3 games in Dallas. He showed that he took a step forward. The team took a step forward against a much better team in the second round and lost. And that happens. There's another step to be here, probably 2 to 3, but I think they're on their way, as opposed to, for the 3rd year in a row, in an elimination game, getting absolutely worked by Colorado or Vegas. There was growth here.
We're going to hear from Luke Schenn. We're going to hear from Brandon Tanev. We're going to hear from Josh Morrissey. We're going to hear from Mason Appleton as well as the show goes on. And Jim, and I'll say this: you don't feel guilty about still having your dad, man. That you're.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
guilt is a weird word.
Yeah.
I feel bad for all the people, including yourself.
Yeah.
I'm blessed.
Yeah. The thing is, and there's a pit, particularly the day after, and like the day of. My dad passed overnight, late at night. It was, I think, almost 11 o'clock or something, and I got the phone call from my brother who was there. My younger brother Colton was there at the hospital, and I'd spent the whole day there. I didn't know that he was going to pass overnight. Of course, I wouldn't have left. And so it was sort of the initial sort of shock. And then you head down to where it was St. Boniface. And there's a pit in your stomach, and you can't think about anything else. And that's why it's just there. And listen, everybody who's lost a close family member or a parent or anybody understands what Mark Scheifele was going through that game. And also when you grow up, and a lot of these guys have grown up with Mark Scheifele, the pain the whole team felt for him is just, it's incredible. And for Mark Scheifele to play like he did, man, like, and I'll say this too. There's been a lot of, Mark Scheifele, and not these last couple of years, but he's taken a lot of heat about his commitment and his drive and all that. And most of it, I think, probably unfairly. And I admit that I fell into that at some points too, as well. I mean, you saw
some of it was fair though.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying some of it,
a player.
Some of it was fair. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, look at his commitment as well. And, I'll tell you this, like, without a shadow of a doubt, 100%. If I was in the National Hockey League, my dad would have wanted me to play, and I would have played. I'm telling you right now, I 100%. There's no way I don't play.
But knowing that, Cam, and then being able to do it with composing yourself, and then to do it so well.
Well,
there's three different levels there, right? Like, I think every player in the NHL would play for their dad. I'm not sure every player would be able to stay focused throughout the full 3 periods plus, and I'm not sure every player could play that well through it. So I really admire him as a person, and not just a hockey player as a person. But I mean, to the overall point, I'm not guilty, but men in their early 30s should not be losing their fathers.
That's true. It's very true.
And I know it's life, and I know life can be cruel, and that game is life, right? That's why I always say sports reflects life often. It's not fair.
No, it's not.
And the way that game ended wasn't fair, but that's life. There's other components. There's another very good team out there that's trying to, and then what is fair is the compassion in which the Stars showed and admired what was going on while still doing their jobs. And that's what life's about. In my opinion, life's not fair. It's how you handle the unfairness. And I think that's what I'll take most from that Game 6 and what happened.
My dad was 59, right? And it was not last December, but the November before. And now that I'm a father, I'm not ready to leave my son when he's 30. That's where I can talk about my dad, and that's what crushed me. Was like my son in 30 years, I'm not ready to leave him.
Well,
we'll be right back.
You do that, and you do the things you can.
Yeah, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Does it feel like there's maybe less frustration or disappointment or anger this time around?
I mean, you could say there could be more anger that, we've gotten that much closer and we didn't win. So there's two ways to look at it.
That's Kyle Connor, probably his best quote all year.
That's what I want to hear. I know there's a lot of other stuff going on, and rightfully so. But I want them to say, you could look at it, we took a step, but we need to take more. That's what you want to hear going into this offseason.
Here's from Mike, send on the text line, 204-780-6868. Jim and Cam, set aside what Mark was dealing with along with his teammates. The season is over for them. And the bottom line is this Jets team was not built to win the Stanley Cup. And it showed. You cannot and will not win if you don't win in the opponent's building 0-for-6 on the road. Now, I'll disagree with you, Mike, saying this team was not built to win a Stanley Cup. I think it was. But you're right in the sense that 0-for-6 on the road, listen, you got to be perfect at home. And you have to win the President's Trophy again next year and win every single game at home to move on.
I'm sorry. There's only one team this year that was built to win the Stanley Cup by this logic, and that's the one that's going to win it. You're not going to convince me that there's not 6 or 7 or 8 other teams that could win the Cup, and for whatever reason they don't.
We'll call the Jets at noon. Hockey hotline 204-780-6800. Celebrated Boston Pizza, Canada's go-to place for the playoffs. We'll hear from more players after this.
Didn't really settle how I wanted to, so I didn't really hit it how I needed or wanted to. You look back at it, and you score the goal, you're winning the game. So yeah, obviously it's kind of haunting in a sense, frustrating, but at the same time, like, you see goalies make incredible saves, and I didn't get what I wanted on it, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's a game of inches, and it is what it is, I guess. Mason
Appleton, Jim Toth is going to be living with that one for the rest of his life. You never get over that. Golden opportunity, 8 minutes or so left. That puck goes in. He buries that. Now Ottinger made a good save, no doubt about it. But that puck's got to go in the net. And
but there's a ton of them, Cam.
You probably, if that puck goes in, you win that game. I believe the Jets win that
There's
game.
a ton of them, Cam. I'm not trying to alleviate the fact that he's got to bury that, because I put it in the same category as when Velarde doesn't look up and he throws a puck into the back of Ottinger's skate, which I get. Like, when you get a rebound like that, you turn and fire it. You don't. But if he had looked up, he would see that Ottinger was facing the other way, and you put it top. Kyle Connor doesn't.
The Jets win that game, though.
Kyle Connor doesn't bury the Iafallo one. I mean, that's one that 99 out of 100 Connor buries. The breakaway, he doesn't elevate. I could go on, and I could name you not just Mason Appleton, but I agree. That was a key part of the game. You bury that with 8 minutes left, and it's on. Like, yeah. Dallas is going to come, but you know how to. This is a very good team at shutting leads down and stuff. So, but woulda, shoulda, coulda. I mean, there's so many. The way I remember this Dallas series is not the goaltending, is not the physicality. It was physical. I mean, we can even get into the specialty teams.
Yeah.
I thought the St. Louis series was decided on specialty teams. I think this series was missed opportunities by the Jets. And I think Dallas knows that. I think Dallas looks back at this and goes, hey, look, Pete DeBoer in the handshake line said, what a goalie, to Connor Hellebuyck. And he said, thank you and good luck and blah, 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 blah. But Ottinger made unbelievable saves, but also things hit him, right? I think the Mason Appleton one, the disappointing part of that is he put it right into the middle of the crease, which is where Ottinger was.
Yeah.
He had a yawning short side, a yawning top side, anywhere else. But that's the difference, I think, is in so many of them. If you just elevate a puck, if you just do this in key moments, and they didn't. I look at the Dallas series as not as they got outplayed, outworked. I look at it as they got out-finished. They didn't finish their opportunities. They had a ton of them.
Jim, I agree with you 100%. That's how you're going to look back on this series. That's the one thing I think that's frustrating, and where the Jets really fell short was not capitalizing on a good portion of their chances. If they go back and they've every single one of those 6 games, Jim, they had golden opportunities, several that they just were not able to capitalize on.
And the difference,
you're absolutely right. That's how you're going to look back on this series. And as we look back and we get further and further away from it, and we go further into the summer, that's going to be what the talk's going to be about, is how do the Winnipeg Jets finish? Because they did a great job generating them. They did, but they weren't able to put them in the back of the net.
And we're accustomed to them not generating anything. We're accustomed to going into an elimination game against Colorado and getting absolutely worked. We're accustomed to them going into an elimination game in Vegas and not showing up and not creating anything. They created a ton. That's the growth I saw. That's the difference. They grew. They can create. Now, can you finish? And maybe that's the offseason.
Yeah.
This is what you now look at is, if we continue to play this, we have a style. We have a system that works for our crew. Maybe it's an Appleton who's a free agent.
Yeah.
Let's get somebody else who can finish better. Maybe it's Ehlers. Maybe they like the 60 points and the power play and all that, but we want somebody who can give us 60 points but also be physical. I don't know. We're going to get into that later on this week, but I that's how I look at this series. And it goes back to game 1, Cam. I remember the third period in game 1, the 3-2 loss. They were all over them. If they could have tied that game or got a win, you can go to Dallas and lose a game in overtime on a penalty kill and have a game 7. But it's the playoffs, every game matters. And you didn't get it done in game 1. You lost home ice advantage. You did brilliantly in game 5 elimination. I think you did brilliantly in a game 6 elimination, but that's the margin. It's one play when you're facing elimination that often costs you.
Every single game, there was a point where the Jets were in it, and all they needed was one guy to step up and make that play. In the losses, in the 4 games that they lost, they needed somebody to step up and make a play, and they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And there were those moments where they presented themselves and the Jets could not
And even
capitalize.
the propelled goal off the kick,
Yeah.
all you had to do was refocus and mark Mikko Rantanen like you did the rest of the series.
Yeah.
But you didn't. And from the high slot, he goes bar down, which he's done 4 times now in the playoffs. Going back to the first round.
And look at the Jets.
Or 3 times.
Yeah, look at the Jets in Game 6. I mean, that was always the challenge, right? Taking care of Mikko Rantanen. The matchups, right? The Jets they elevated to that. I mean, it was something they struggled with, and they took those guys out of the game.
Now, if they get the overtime winner and come home, I like their chances.
Big time.
But you and I talked about it on air and off. I think when they went down 3-1, I said, it's tough to beat Dallas 3 games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I meant. They got to overtime. They were 15 seconds away from killing a penalty or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That's that close of a margin, right? But yet if you get it done, then you got another game. But it's real tough to beat a deep team like Dallas 3 times.
Jets at Noon is brought to you by Wash Method Car Wash, 690 St. Anne's Road. VIP take on the text line wins a VIP car wash from our good friends at Wash Method. 204-780-6868. We'll announce the winner later in the program. Coming at you live from the Boston Pizza Studio, celebrating the whiteout. The whiteout never dies. The whiteout goes on forever at Boston Pizza, your go-to place for the playoffs. This was a discussion we had in the last segment. Brad says, hi, Jim, with Cam's logic. Obviously, this team wasn't built to win a Stanley Cup. He said only one team can win it, right? But it wasn't the Jets. Our team was not good enough.
I said that.
We have, I think Brad's got this whole thing confused.
Yeah, sorry, Brad. I was the one who said only one team is built.
Yeah. We have no second line center. Need one more top D-man at the minimum, Brad. Okay. So, Brad, the Edmonton Oilers last year, and I think the Edmonton Oilers are a very flawed roster. I think they have a lot of flaws on that team, much more than the Winnipeg Jets.
More flawed last year than this year.
That's right. Yeah. Is that a team that you consider to be built to win a Stanley Cup? Because I think you're not defining that properly. You're not fleshing it out enough. Because there's only one team that ends up winning the Stanley Cup at the end of the year. All the other teams weren't built to win it, right? But define building a team. Every team has flaws. Every team has positives, and every team has negatives. And when you go into the playoffs, hey, everybody's got a chance to win. Every team can end up, we've seen it happen before. St. Louis when they won the Cup. The LA Kings when they won the Cup, right?
Well, let's look at this, Cam. There's a current Stanley Cup champion that's back in the Eastern Conference Final, the Florida Panthers. They're built to win the Stanley Cup. If they don't, are they, quote, not built to win the Stanley Cup? They just did it. But that being said, let's look at the Florida Panthers. Do they have great goaltending? Do the Jets? Do they have good puck-moving, offensive contributing defenseman unit? Yes. One of them used to play here, Nate Schmidt. Do they have
two of them?
Do they have depth? Do they have
Kulikov too?
Do they have a really strong top 6 that can score goals and do things? Yeah. We can debate like Perfetti and all that if they're enough for Nemestikov. I think Brad brings up valid points. I think that, and my point to this is, Brad, the Jets are built to win a Stanley Cup. They're built like every other team that mostly does it, and everybody does it in different fashions given the players they have. But do they need more to get it done? Yes. Like, we're not talking about rebuilding it to win the Stanley Cup. We're talking about retooling it to adding something to this. They are built to win a cup right now. It's just, what more do they need? Second line center? Perhaps, because if Nemestikov goes down, you're even better. Because I think he's played well. Mm-hmm. But he's not an elite second line center in the National Hockey League. They need to finish. They need some pieces. And maybe it's Appleton, maybe it's Ehlers. They go in a different direction and get another 60-point player that is more physical, whatever they want. The third line, would you like more finishing? Perhaps. I think, Florida has 4 lines that at a certain point in a series can contribute, but they got secondary scoring this playoffs. Niederreiter, Lowry had a couple, I know they were empty netters, but he also had a pretty big one in Game 7 in overtime. So I think they're built to win a cup, but do they need some? Sure, you can always fix that. But I think there's 8 teams that are built to win a cup, and only one's going to do it. Yeah, Brad, but we saying our team was not good enough. The Jets won 1 series. To lift the cup, they would have needed to win 3 more. Now, they took the second series they played in long. It was not a short series. It got to 6 games into overtime. It's not 7 games, but 6 into overtime, I think, is a long series. I think you'd classify as that. But you're right. I mean, they still needed to win 3 more series
to end up winning the cup. I mean, is that good enough? That's why I played that clip from Kyle Connor to earlier on in the show, where, like, listen, you know what? Let's also hear from Josh Morrissey, who talked about next season and the disappointment of the playoff loss earlier today.
We pushed, obviously, a great Dallas team to 6 in overtime, and, you know, I think all of us felt if we managed a way to get that to Game 7 that, you know, there's no way we weren't going to win that game at home. So at least that was our mindset. So I think for us, you know, we had a great season. Things we talked about improving, we did improve on. We worked extremely hard last summer to do that, and through this entire year, we won an incredible Game 7 and obviously move forward. But I think the sentiment is that drive that we had after last season, when, you know, it didn't go our way, when we felt you know, we needed to make some serious changes. I mean, we need to have that same attitude this summer in terms of pushing ourselves, and, you know, maybe even harder than we did last year. We saw, you know, the results of our hard work this season, and how that we got rewarded and improved. But, you know, to get to that next level of obviously ultimate goal, winning the Stanley Cup, we've got to continue to push to go to that next level. So
I like what Josh Morrissey says. I don't think the Jets should be hanging their heads. That should not be their mentality. Their mentality going into the summer here is like, look at how hard we worked last summer. Look where it got us. It hasn't got us to the top of the mountain yet. We need to go back. We need to have the exact same mentality, the exact same work ethic, get that 5 to 10% better, get to that next level. That's the mentality, and that's what I'm hearing from them. Now, talk is cheap, but listen, the Jets said those things last summer, and they put them into, and they executed them. I have faith that they'll do the same thing again.
Well, again, that's perfect, what I want to hear. If you're a Jets fan, I think that's what you should want to hear. Kyle Connor said it. He goes, you can look at it both ways, right? Like, we improved, but did we improve enough? And so there's more to do. Essentially what Josh Morrissey's saying is, like, we have more to do, but also we have the faith we can do it because we just did it. We just improved on a number of things in our game to get us to another level. And so that's, again, they're going to go to work again. That's what I like hearing. It's been 2 days and they're already getting ready to go to work, right? One of the best things I heard on a broadcast this year was watching a Blackhawks game, and they showed Connor Bedard with like 13 games left. And he said he's already told them he's not going to the World Championships. He's already got a trainer discussed and a program put together to improve on the things that he wasn't very good at this year. With 3 weeks left in the season. That's what you want to hear. That's what you want to see. Like, it's summer, but it's not good enough, and we want to get better. And he's right. They got better at a number of things they said they were going to get better at.
Let's take a break. Let's come back. On the other side, hey, we'll hear from KC talking about his future going forward. He's coming into his final year with the Winnipeg Jets. Brandon Tanev speaks about what his plans are and potentially where he wants to end up. We'll squeeze in some comments from Luke Schenn about this team getting to the next level and getting to the cup as well. And we'll also hear from Connor Hellebuyck. All that audio still to come on the other side.
Tomorrow we're going to open the phones, right? We usually do it after a playoff game. We just wanted to get through everything today because the audio was coming in tomorrow. Yeah. We'll have a free-for-all Friday on a Wednesday and let you weigh in on what you think of the team.
We'll be right back.
Just me and the way I've gotten to the level I've gotten to is because I've always had an answer. You know, I've always tried to fix a problem, and I've always looked at the smallest little details and found an answer. And when bad things happen, when you're doing things right, it makes you step back and really question, maybe those tweaks weren't right. But I think what I learned the most is you can't over tweak your game. You know, that's the biggest learning curve this year, is the second you overgrip it and start overthinking, that's when you lose your edge.
Connor Hellebuyck was unbelievable in Game 6. He was absolutely outstanding. Sensational.
Yeah. I mean, there was growth there in 2 rounds, right? From where he was and where he came from and all that. I don't think he had a bad game in any of the series of the games against Dallas. I think he had a bad goal in Game 4. And other than that, I think he's got a lot to stand up and gave his team a chance to win. Again, to me, is a series of lost opportunities. You had chances every game to score 3 or 4 goals, and if you get one of the 3 or 4, it's maybe a different story.
There was goals that Hellebuyck let in that he wanted back, and there was lots of shots from lots of members of the Winnipeg Jets that they would like back too as well.
I mean, Ottinger just... There's no way Ottinger... I've been waiting for Ottinger since he lost in Game 7 overtime to Calgary when he put his name on the map. Been waiting for him to... at 26, 27 to come into what Connor Hellebuyck has become. I think he's done it this playoffs.
I'm interested to see what he does against the Oilers.
I'm fascinated by
because
that.
if he can play like he played against the Jets, the Oilers, I think, are in trouble.
Dallas are like the Jets. They don't defend the rush well, and I'm fascinated by how Ottinger helps him in this series.
Here's KCA. This is the final year of his contract. Here's him speaking about his future.
Definitely different factors come into decisions now that it's not just me. Yeah, that's my philosophy throughout the career is it'll always take care of itself. I don't figure stress too much about it or worry about it, and when it comes, and haven't really thought about it much, and time will take care of itself.
He's a new dad too as well. You think this is something that gets dealt with in the summer or training camp, just like Hellebuyck and Scheifele? This is a deal that comes together.
I don't know when a deal would get done or if he accepts it, but I can promise you when an offer will be made July 1st.
Yeah.
Or shortly after. I would think, and I think they try to do it. And then like he says, you take some time, you talk to your family. This is the one time coming up a year from now or a year from this July that Kyle can decide where he wants to live. He does it.
Here's Brandon Tanev.
Yeah, I mean, like I've said, I enjoy playing here in Winnipeg. I love the city. The team's great. Obviously a very good team, and we'll tackle that in the next few weeks here. I mean, it's obviously still disappointing that we're not still playing. So you kind of, you get past that, and then you move on to the next piece, like you mentioned, and trying to figure things out.
Is there a spot for Brandon Tanev? This is another part of the conversation we're going to continue to have here. You re-sign Nemestikov, you bring back Iafallo. Is there a spot for Tanev? Here's Luke Schenn on getting to the cup.
It doesn't get any easier. You got to start from day one again too, and it's a journey, and you don't think about the end goal, day one of training camp. You got to get there. I mean, you look how competitive this league is, and teams are going to obviously try to get a lot better in the offseason and make changes and make moves.
Yeah, there's Luke Schenn. I'm just sorry I got to cut that one short because we're out of time here, because I want to make sure we mention Josh Morrissey. He would not have come back. It obviously was a knee.
Done for the playoffs.
He would have been done for the playoffs, and it was not connected to his injury in Game 7 against St. Louis. That was concussion protocol. So these were not connected things. I thought they were for sure.
Man, the way he got hit and slumped over with his shoulder, I thought that was shoulder, but that's the slumping over like that from concussion. That's getting your bell rung.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Jim told to take you all the way.
And he takes a beating the last couple of playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. Jim, you'll take things all the way till 2 o'clock.
Yeah, and tomorrow,
thank you very much, Jeffrey
phones.
Fort. Yeah, open phone lines tomorrow. Thank you very much, Jeffrey Forte. See ya.